I was raised in a very religious family. It was made clear from the start that I was to study theology in order to trap a suitable mate, marry, reproduce, and live the life of a wife and mother. That was my destiny. I was fine with that until I hit my teens and started to question most of what I had been told. This, in the long run, led up to what I like to refer to as the Great Family Breakdown of 2000. I was 18 and had my mind set on 1. Not studying theology, 2. Spending a year backpacking and working in interesting places, and 3. Eventually coming back home and becoming a vet, possibly never marrying or having kids. This, of course, resulted in first my father, then my entire family disowning me. Well, mostly because of the not reading theology bit, but you get the general circumstances under which I grew up. So naturally, I also picked up smoking out of pure spite. The rebellion streak really appealed to the teenage me. Okay, so in the spring of 2000, I set out on my adventure. I had a very undetailed plan. Travel through Italy, France, see the romantic historical places, continue to England and sip on a overly priced but very, I assumed, sophisticated plastic cup of coffee while enjoying the slow turning of the London Eye. The plan was to get odd jobs along the way. It seemed so easy in all the movies I had seen since breaking free of my overly religious family. I was, to sum it up, a very naive 18-year-old girl with no life experience. In June, I arrived in Italy. I had almost no money left and did what came natural to me in times of need. I turned to the closest church. It was a beautiful day, a beautiful church, and I enjoyed the chilly air inside the stone walls when I became aware that I was being watched. I turned around and saw a nice-looking man in his late 20s, smiling gently at me and asking something in Italian. His English was almost as bad as my Italian, but we managed to introduce ourselves as Gabriella and Franco. Franco, it turned out, was some sort of volunteer, keeping the church and its surroundings tidy. He invited me to a garden barbecue that evening, with people from the church choir, and it was a wonderful experience. Soon I had a job helping a gardener, and life was wonderful. The people were welcoming and sweet, and I started to learn a little Italian. It was like one of those movies. But some days, when I went into the church in the late afternoon to light a candle and admire the great artwork, I could feel Franco watching me in a way that I was not entirely comfortable with. What made me go from finding him charming to slightly unnerving was, however, how he held one hand on the back of my neck when we walked out of church that first afternoon. Something about that made me uneasy. In my admittedly limited experience, you hold another person's hand, rest a hand on their arm, possibly even on the small of their back, but back of the neck. It felt strange, and I disliked it right away, but disregarded my first impression with the fact that I did not know their customs. Then I got used to it, thinking it must just be his ways. He was always polite and even shy in our awkward conversations, often avoiding direct eye contact and keeping his distance whenever anyone else was there. When in company, he would become almost invisible, shrinking into himself. It was strange to see, and I thought maybe it was some sort of social phobia. Perhaps he had been given the job there because he had some sort of invisible handicap that made it hard for him to function in a social setting. When others were around, he became someone else, much more introverted and elusive. Weeks went by, and he started to hang out close to where I worked. He was often close by when I took my evening walks, and I started to get a lingering feeling that something was not right with him. But I didn't fear him, and I didn't wish to seem rude. When I had let several days pass without returning to the church, he came to the house where I rented a room to ask for me, and wondered if perhaps I was ill, since I had not turned up for our evening walks. In retrospect, this should have made me pack my bags and get on a bus. But remember, I was a very naive person at the time. So instead, when he held out a hand to invite me for a walk, I took it, ignoring the feeling of danger that started to bruise somewhere deep inside my chest. We walked past the place where the bus usually stops, where I usually turned around to walk back home, because there's nothing more to see down that road. As soon as we were away from the busier street, his hand let go of mine, and he placed it instead on the back of my neck, mumbling Italian words at a pace I could not follow or comprehend. I tried being polite and nice, turning into the friendly nice girl that I was brought up to be. It had no effect as to ease his iron grip or slow him down, and soon we were on a very lonely street that I remembered led to a closed dairy factory. You would have thought that my instincts would kick in now, right? Yeah, I wish. I thought that I could cure his sudden aggressive behaviour with friendly, polite manner and charm. I know it sounds almost insane how I just let this happen. But remember, I was trained from toddlerhood to be a nice girl, to not fuss, not raise my voice. I found my voice that day. It took some time, I admit that. But when I found myself backed up against the concrete wall of a dark and empty factory house, and saw the hostile look in his eyes as he pulled a small knife out of his pocket, I completely flipped. I screamed, scratched, kicked and clawed. It was the kind of knife that you use for opening boxes, small and thin, but probably dangerous enough nonetheless. He was so shocked by my sudden violent fit that he dropped it, and I took my chance to run. I didn't care where I ran to. I just ran like a crazed animal, all while screaming unarticulated nonsense. I lost both my sandals, but kept running. I didn't even look over my shoulder to see if I was even being chased. I just ran. I reached the first house on the street and threw myself at the door, knocking, kicking, shouting, until it opened, and a terrified young mum, the teacher in the village, let me in. I didn't report it to the police. I left the next day on the first bus, but I regret that decision to this day. At the time, I was too embarrassed and ashamed to talk to the police, and it would take time to get a translator to do it properly anyways. I just wanted to go. It was a very frightening experience, but I did learn something fundamentally important. If needed, never hesitate to fight with everything you've got. You can't make a predator go away by being nice and polite. Hello everyone, SinisterShaf here. This story was You Can't Fight a Predator with Niceness by Not Your Woman. Thank you for letting me narrate your story. If you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe if you have not done so already. Also, if you can, share this video with your friends. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Links are in the description below. Thank you for watching, and, as always, stay sinister.